world is made of ideas, and the only way to share these ideas is to speak the same language. But what if we wanted to engage in a discussion with the stars and the universe? What insights could we gain by listening to the echoes of Big Bang or feeling the pulse of our own planet? What if there was a language that helps us understand the physics that thrusts planes into the sky and the science of feeding 7 billion people? What if understanding the patterns in chemistry meant finding a cure to malaria or cancer? What if we already live in the future, augmented by the tools we created? The language of maths has given us ones and zeros, and they in turn have given us the internet and artificial intelligence. We are shrinking time and space to connect with each other and to power our economies. And only by working together, sharing ideas across borders and continents, and only by speaking the same language can we take on the world's greatest challenges. So, if you're still wondering what the world really needs, it needs you to speak its language. And that language is maths.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan James, and it's my big privilege to be here today on International Women's Day. So welcome, all of you here, and also welcome to anyone that's joining us from the live stream today. So I've got a few things I need to do before we start. I've been told housekeeping in case any of you need to know if you do need to use the toilets, you need to go back out. They're up in the foyer at the front. And if we do have an evacuation bell, we are to follow the theatre staff through the doors and out onto the kidney lawn. So that's got that out of the way. What I'd like to do today is, first of all, tell you a little bit about who we are. So who's brought you here today? Now, I work for AMSI. That's the Australian Mathematical Sciences Institute. Now, AMSI has 4 main divisions. So we have the schools division. We're the ones bringing this event to you today. We have a higher ed division, a research division, and an intern division. Basically, we all have slightly different programs, slightly different goals, but the main aim of the whole of AMSI is to represent nationally and basically to enhance the profile of mathematics and mathematics education. So we're all aiming towards that one goal. The particular division today is schools, and this project is called Choose Maths. Choose Maths was funded by the BHP Foundation. So that's a big industry. So you may wonder, why do we need to worry about maths? So I'm going to show you a graph up here. So first of all, a little bit of statistics before you meet some of our ambassadors. So those of you who can look at this trend here, this is the trend of maths, people studying it at the highest level and the intermediate level over the last 20 years. Now, you should be able to see that there's a decline going on there. If you have a look way back 20 years ago, nearly 40% of students were studying either at higher levels of maths or intermediate. And the whole way through, consistently, there's been about 50% of the population, this is the year 12 cohort, who have been taking what we call elementary mathematics. That's remained the same, but what has gone down, as you see, are the amount of students doing both intermediate and the amount of students doing the higher levels. Now, that little blue line there may not look like it's changing that much, but those of you who've got good eyesight will perhaps be able to see that that level there is saying that only 9.4 of the Year 12 population in 2017 studied what we would call the highest level of maths. So that's less than 10% of Year 12 students studying those calculus-based mathematics. And this graph here perhaps shows that even more. This is the downward trend of those people studying high levels of maths. Okay, so why does that matter? If they don't want to do maths, why should they? Well, it does matter because people who study maths, those skills are needed for out in the workforce later on. This is a big statistic. Lots of you would have heard this. It's published a lot in newspapers, it's on the media a lot. 75% of all the fastest growing occupations are all going to be called, well, they're going to need high-level STEM skills. So, STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. But science, technology and engineering all require high-level maths skills. You can't do those without maths. So basically we could rewrite 75% of the fastest growing jobs for the future are going to need high-level maths skills. So just do the little bit of maths there. 75% of all those jobs, less than 10% of the students studying those maths skills. 45% of the current jobs, so the jobs that we know today, are going to disappear. So there's lots and lots of people out there trying to work out what are the new jobs going to be. They're guessing what they're going to be. Jobs have changed a lot in the last 5 years, 10 years. We have no idea what the job market's going to be like in another 5 years, let alone in the next 10 years. What we do know is that the world around us is just full of data and technology. When you've got data, what do you need? You need people to be able to analyse that data. Mathematics gives you those skills. Mathematics gives you lots of skills. It gives you the skills of being able to take a hugely complex problem and reduce it down so you can solve it. It gives you critical analysis skills. It gives you the ability to be able to interpret data and project from there. Maths gives you skills for all of those jobs, but it also gives you skills in real life. I reckon that every single one of you have used maths a number of times today already and don't even know it. You can't go along your daily life without using maths in some shape or form, and that's at the basic level. But at the higher level, it gives you that logical processes. So it's really important that we think about maths and we think about the importance of it. When we talk about careers, this is looking backwards as opposed to forwards. So if we look at the top 10 jobs in 2017 and 2018. Now, when we're ranking those jobs, they're not ranked on this is the job that gives you the best wage. That's part of it. But when they do this model, what they do is they look at the quality of the job. So quality of job takes a lot of things into consideration. Yeah, wage is one of those things. But it's also job satisfaction. It's also the environment that you work in. It's also whether it has good career prospects for future. It's also whether that job is a worthwhile job for you as an individual, but also for everybody else outside there. Is this a job that's going to be good for the country, the world? Okay, so it takes a lot of things in. Have a look at them and look at how many of them are highly mathematical. So you've got the position that it says mathematician and statistician. Okay, but most of those other jobs involve high-level math skills as well. One of the things that we find when people talk about jobs is they don't know where maths can lead you, or statistics, because you don't see the jobs that say mathematician. You do sometimes see statistician, but you don't really see the jobs that say mathematician. And so when you're thinking about what to study later on, you know that if you go and study a law degree, you can be a lawyer, okay? You know that if you study engineering, you can be an engineer. So what can you be if you go and study something that's got a high level of maths or a high level of statistics? What can you be? Well, basically, you can be just about anything you want to be. You really can. And that's the thing about maths. Maths underpins so many different careers. Maths can be used as a tool to go from one platform to another platform. And this is what we're hoping to show you today, that lots of careers that you don't know about involve high levels of maths. And once you're in a career that involves a high level of maths, you can change your career as well. Because mathematics is basically the same across lots of different avenues. So I was a pure mathematician. My PhD was in medical statistics. But the work that I did in medical statistics is exactly the same work as it would be if I went into business and became a risk analyst. The maths is the same, the context is different. And as a mathematician or a statistician, you can move from one field to another because you've got those tools. So you've all got your little bags today. And in there, one of the things that we use as a tool to show people where maths can be is what we call our maths ads, where we look at different ads, real ads, that need maths skills. And I'm not sure if you can read some of this, but if you have a look here, up in those headings, it's not saying mathematician or statistician, but every single one of those jobs, that's what they want. They want somebody with high-level maths skills or statistical skills or analysis skills. None of these say mathematician, but they are all asking for somebody with high-level maths skills. And if you see the different range, lots of different areas of industry these are coming from. Likewise, these ones here. So, maths, if you can do it, can take you in lots of different areas. This chart here, we tried to put together to show people that the higher level skills you got, the more opportunities that you have down the track. Only trouble that we had when we was putting this together was that once you get to level 3 and 4, when you've got high-level maths skills or statistical skills, there were so many jobs that we could have gone up and up and up, building them up. But our designer didn't like that. He liked to keep it nice and sort of on the page. Okay, so that's why maths is important, but why have we got you here? It's International Women's Day, so that's one reason. So that's great, so we can celebrate that. But why are we running an event here with just girls? And the reason for that is simple. Go back to another chart here. And you may know this, if you look around your school, unless you're in, obviously, an all-girls school, but there are nearly twice as many boys as girls taking the higher levels of maths. So the big statistic that we've released today in the press is that nationally there are only 6.9% of girls taking the high levels of maths. There are 12.2% of boys. Why? It's not the old-fashioned thing where people said, girls can't do maths. They don't have a maths brain. That's not true. And that's been disproved so many times now. Girls are just as capable of doing maths as their male counterparts. In fact, a lot of data, a lot of international data and national data shows that you are actually better. You can do it. So why do you choose not to? Now, you've got the talent, you know. Every single one of you can be what you want to be later on in life. It can be hard. Doing maths can be hard. I'm not going to stand here and say it's actually really easy. But anything in life that is worthwhile usually needs hard work. So if you want to go out there and you want to be an athlete, you are going to train. If you want to go out there and be good at maths, achieve a lot, you're going to have to work hard at it too. It's no such thing as people who have a maths brain and don't have a maths brain. It really isn't. It's those who are going to try and are prepared to learn from their mistakes. So every single one of you out there, you can achieve something. And we need you. Because that's, if you think about it, if at school you've got twice as many boys and you haven't got these girls doing maths, only 6.9% nationally of girls doing high levels of maths. That means that then goes into university. Fewer girls doing maths skills or statistical skills. Got fewer girls coming out of school, fewer girls going into university. Fewer girls going into the workforce. 84% of the STEM workforce are male. Industry wants diversity in all shapes and forms. And it's not saying that girls are any better than boys. It's actually saying we want both. You want to have people who have differences of opinions, people who have different ways of thinking. We want females to have as many opportunities to get a good job, to get out there and be doing those jobs that are changing the world. And in order to get them, that means that you've got to keep your math skills up. As I said here earlier, there is no difference. The fact that there is a brain difference between males and females has been proven scientifically to be wrong now. So if you ever hear that, you tell them that's not true. My brain's as good as anybody else's. Okay, so what we're going to do today, I'm going to introduce you to a few of our ambassadors. Some of them are here in person. Some of them I'm going to show you by video. The ones that are here in person, later on you're going to get the opportunity to ask them some questions if you'd like. Now, if you think about it, something that you'd like to ask them when they are up here presenting, just write it down and we'll get them here at the end, and you can either ask the question yourself, or if you don't want to ask the question, write it on a bit of paper and somebody will collect them for you and ask a question for you later on. Okay, so that'll be your chance and opportunity to meet them. What I'm going to do now then is to introduce you via video to one of our first ambassadors. Now, Kylie is a very good example of somebody who had really good, she's got a PhD in mathematics and statistics, and she has changed her career a number of times. She's done work for the environment, she's also worked for BHP on their mining, remote mining, and she's now working in not-for-profit education sector, all using her maths skills. So what we're trying to show you is if you've got those maths skills, you can be so many different things. So if you'd like to just watch this first, and then I will then introduce you to someone in person.
The ocean supports a huge variety of life. It's also a source of food and resources for the community. But with too much fishing, soon there could be nothing left. As a marine researcher, I mapped the seabed and studied the diversity of fish and abundance of other marine life. Using this data, we can create marine protected areas that will be forever safe for future generations. My name is Kylie Collins, and maths enables me to make a positive difference to the environment and the community. Protecting areas of the ocean from fishing can be quite challenging. There are no fences in the water, keeping the fish from leaving. But that's where maths and science come in. In my research, I analysed a large amount of samples and data, and the result was clear. The marine protected areas almost always produced more fish and bigger fish. Thanks to these findings, I helped to show evidence for protected areas on the WA coast. Seeing how my work had a real impact on the world around me was truly inspiring. After finishing a PhD in statistics, I wanted to use these skills to benefit my community. Nowadays, I like to help not-for-profit organisations. My current projects span from aged care to education. Based on my experience as a scientist, I like to connect schools with engaging STEM projects.
Hold on. Yep. So, see how it works?
Because with science, you can understand the world around you and how to better protect it. I think to have a long and happy career, you have to keep learning and building your skills. Thanks to maths, I've had the chance to help my community and to work in environmental science. This planet is our only home. And we need to give our next generation the right tools to protect it.
So how cool is that to be able to go out and take something that maybe people think are very, traditional, and actually go out and use it to help save the environment. So it's really good that she's been able to take something that she's really passionate about and use her math skills for it. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker in person. Lyndall also has her PhD. She has spoken for us a few times. She has a great video online if you'd like to watch it, all explaining to her about her previous work in malaria. And then she went and left us for a while, disappeared from the country. Now she's back in a new job. And so I'm going to pass her on and she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Cool, thank you. Hello, all right, I'm on. So I'm going to talk to you girls today, not so much about what I'm doing now, a little bit, but more my journey from when I was your age to how I got to what I'm doing now. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about what I actually do. So I'm a bioinformatician. So that's a bit of a mouthful. What even is that? So it's okay if you don't know what that is. I didn't know what that was when I was your age. In fact, I didn't know what a bioinformatician was until about 5 years ago, and I am one now. So I analyse medical data sets using maths. So I look for patterns in medical data sets that might help explain why someone has a disease. So I'm currently working on motor neuron disease, and that's the disease that Stephen Hawking had. And it's a really horrible disease, and there's no cure for it, and usually people will die within 5 years of being diagnosed. So it's really important to try and understand why some people get this disease, and to try and help them, and in the long term perhaps build a cure for this or create a cure. So how did I get to be working on something like that now? So I'm going to go all the way back to when I was about your age. So at high school, my favourite subjects were the science subjects, like maths and chemistry. And yes, on a scale from 1 to 10 about how well I did in these subjects, so if 10 was amazing and 1 was very poor, I was about a 6 or a 7, so I wasn't the best student by far. I did all right and I passed and I enjoyed it. And so at high school, my favourite subject was maths, and so I decided to go to university and do a Bachelor of Science majoring in mathematics and statistics. So I'm just going to give little bits of advice as I go. So my first piece of advice to you when you're thinking about what to do at university would be to do something that you enjoy. So maths was my favourite subject, so that I went to study that at university. So I got to uni and I wanted to do a Bachelor of Science majoring in maths. And so I turned up to uni on my first day and I was really nervous, as you would be. So what do I wear? Am I going to make any friends? What are my classes going to be like? So I walk into my first maths class and I sit down. And to my surprise, we had a test. And this was in New Zealand, by the way. I don't think they do this in Australia. So we had a test, and I think this was to separate the competent from perhaps the not so competent math students. And you needed 30 out of 60 to remain in the class. And I got 28. And yeah, I was pretty disappointed with that. But luckily for me, they lowered the entry score to 28, so I just scraped in. And this was a real turning point for me. So maths was my favourite subject at school, yet I barely made it into the maths class at uni. And this was supposed to be my major. This is my favourite thing, and I'm supposed to go through uni studying this. So I lost all my confidence. I was really embarrassed. I had low self-esteem. And I was constantly comparing myself to all the smart people around me, and most of them were boys, actually. And I just felt really silly. And so a couple of weeks into uni, I rang my mum in tears. And I said, I think I'm going to quit. Like, I just don't think I'm smart enough to do this. It's really intimidating. And then my mum convinced me to stay at uni and just to see the first half of the year through. So that's what I did. And so for me, things don't come quite naturally, so it takes me quite a while to understand things. So I have to read something like 5 times before it starts to click, because I'm a bit of a daydreamer. And so I just had to work a little bit harder to try and understand things, especially in maths. And my grades started coming in from my assignments, and I think in my first assignment I might have got an A, and I was like, well, that's quite nice, and then maybe another A, and then maybe an A+, and I was like, oh, well, this is really nice, and I wasn't expecting this, and so I suppose I'll keep the hard work up because I don't want to get a B now. And so I did, I put in this hard work, and at the end of my first year, I stuck around. I won the award for the top maths student at my university. So I went from barely making it into the class to the top maths student in that first year. And so that really brought a lot of my confidence back. And my next piece of advice to you is if you're struggling with something, perhaps just a little bit of hard work really does go a long way. And I, for sure, really know this, and it is true. I know it's cliche, but it's true. All right, so that was my bachelor, and that took me 3 years. And then towards the end of that, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And one of my lecturers said to me, stay on and do honours. And I didn't think I was smart enough to do honours, but I gave it a go because I didn't know what else I was going to do. So I did my honours year, and that was a bit of a challenge, but no, I got there, and that was fine. But towards the end of my honours year, I noticed my supervisor started sprinkling these little seeds all over the place that perhaps I should do a PhD. And a PhD takes another 3 years. And so I was like, I've just spent 4 years at university. I don't really want to spend another 3. People who do a PhD, it's a doctorate, so you can use the title doctor. So I'm not a doctor. Like that's a bit much. That's a bit impressive. I'm not smart enough to do that. But of course, he was a very convincing man, so I did stay on and I did a PhD. And he helped me look for a project that would be suited to me and my skills. So when you go to university, and if you were to study maths or statistics, they expose you to a lot of different kinds of data. And my favourite data sets that I worked on at uni were the medical data sets. So I moved to Australia, I moved to Melbourne, and I did my PhD in medical biology. I had no biology background, by the way. I stopped doing biology when I was 15, and so now I have a PhD in medical biology. And it's probably a good thing that my careers video isn't playing today, because my careers video is all about my work in malaria. But I just told you I work on motor neuron disease. So how is it? Which one do I work on, malaria or motor neuron disease? Well, actually, over the past few years, I've got to work on some really, really cool data sets. I've got to work on malaria, epilepsy, autism, intellectual disability, giardia, and now I'm in motor neuron disease. And the reason I can do all this is it's maths. So I can literally choose any disease that I think I want to work on, and I will get a job in it because of my maths background. And I'm not joking, I can choose anything and I can now choose to work in that field. So that's why I've switched a bit, because maths has allowed me to enter or to work on all of these different diseases and all these different data sets. Now I did say I was not the smartest cookie, and so I suppose there may be some of you in this audience who feel like maths is really hard, or that you're not smart enough to do maths either. But you are, let me tell you, you really are. It just takes, perhaps for some of you, a little bit more work or a little bit more time. You just need to build up that confidence like I needed to do. And I had to do that until the end of my PhD, pretty much. And then for you to realise that you can do it, and it's really rewarding when you start seeing the results come in. So that's how I got to where I am now. Now I work on motor neuron disease, and we'll see how long I work on this disease for before I change to something else. But if any of you young ladies want to come talk to me, or you have any questions about what I do or how I found university or high school, please ask me questions. I'm really happy to talk to you all, and all the best for all your decisions ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyndall. And same as Lyndall, I worked on cancer trials, and I never did biology beyond year 10. Maths, you can pick up if you've got your maths skills, you can work in lots of different fields because you can pick up the context of it. That type of thing is easy for you to learn down the track, because basically the underpinning modelling is all the same. Okay, so now we're going to show you another video. This one here is a slightly different type of field. So we're going to look at Soleil. So enjoy the video.
Getting to the top is like a physical way of playing chess. Rock climbing is all about assessing the risk and deciding on the next step. That's not too different from running a business. But if you make a mistake here, someone will catch you. It's not the same for a new company. One mistake could mean a big fall. My name is Soleil Valiapan, and I work as a business consultant and investor with startup companies. Up until recently, I worked as an actuary in the insurance industry. It was a great mix of analytics, risk management, and business skills. Basically, I used maths to understand uncertainty and risk. Thanks to this experience, I could open my own consulting business. I feel that it's important to invest in startups that bring about a positive change. One of my clients is High Earth Orbit Robotics. They focus on space imaging and asteroids. And for the upcoming launch of their satellite, I analysed all possible factors. Thanks to my background in maths, I could visualise the production costs, competition, insurance, and even profit margins. I take pride in being able to translate numbers and risk into clear business advice. If you know the risks and take all the right steps, eventually you'll get to the top.
Nice. Good work.
We live in a time of disruption and great ideas, but 1 in 4 startups will fail. It's amazing that with maths, I can help businesses plan their future and make better decisions.
Soleil is actually using her maths in the business world, but she's also doing something, again, which she's passionate about. She wants to help those not-for-profit organisations get off their feet. And again, every time she goes into a new not-for-profit, she has to learn what their business is, what's important to their business, what's going to make their business successful or not. And she can learn that, and she'll use her math skills to help those businesses get on their feet. So, our next speaker that's here in person is in the field of marketing. So could we please welcome Leslie to the stage?
Is this that green one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you to everyone for coming today or for watching in on the live stream. And I think it is a great event, and I love being involved with the Choose Maths guys. And part of that is because, you know, I wish this sort of thing had existed when I was your age and when I was younger, because I was really lucky. So I've always enjoyed maths, was always good at it. It came naturally to me, which I see now as, you know, I was lucky and it was a privilege to be in that situation. But when I was thinking about what to talk to you about today, I thought, well, you know, how did I end up in the job that I'm in? How did I end up in marketing? Because it couldn't really be further removed from maths. And so I thought, well, you know, when I really did enjoy maths, and, you know, I'd studied it through school, through university, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I thought, well, what if, and I mean, show my age, we didn't even really have Google then, so, you know, count yourself lucky. But, you know, so I thought, well, what if I type mathematician into Google? Like, you know, what happens? This is what you get, right? So this is the images you get when you type mathematician into Google. Now, I'm not going to ask people what do you notice from it, because generally response is low. But, you know, there are two key things that I'll take away from it. One is primarily male, and two is we seem to still be in a world of black and white photos. So I was thinking, well, you know, why is that? So, yeah, I mean, I think we've got two three females here. And actually, even if we take this, our female down in the bottom row here, she's there because she's 5 famous female mathematicians. Now that's been a list that she's been on. So I thought, well, what if I type in modern mathematician? Well, we've still got a lot of black and white, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't see many people walking around the street that look like these guys anymore. Right? So aside, and this isn't about men versus women, and actually, in International Women's Day today, the sort of hashtag that we're trying to use is balance for better. Because it's not about, and this is something that Susan alluded to, it's not about one being better than the other, but it's going, we are all a bit different, so let's all work together. So if we think, we'll go, all right, so one aspect being a lot of them are men, that's very stereotypical. But then why are they still black and white? Why are they such old photos? So it got me thinking, well, it's actually because that term mathematician, that job, it doesn't really exist. It's not, yes, someone may say to me, are you a mathematician? Well, yes, in that I studied maths and that I use it in my everyday job. But it's not something that I don't write on my CV, oh, mathematician, because what does it even mean? And so I thought, well, what if I think more about what the job roles I've had? So as I say, I studied maths. I studied maths and statistics. I always enjoyed it. Had no idea what I wanted to do. To me, it was you could either be a maths teacher, you could be an accountant, or this thing called an actuary that I only heard of because my brother became one, and actually, I had no idea what it was. So then I thought, well, what are the job titles that I've had? So I started off working in market researcher, and then I was a market research analyst. And then I went and I worked for a newspaper publication, market research analyst. And then I went to a media agency. I didn't know what one of them was because I'd never studied marketing. I didn't study business. And I was an econometrician, consultant analyst. And then I went to data analytics consultant. Then I've gone back to a media agency. So now I'm in this marketing analytics director. Nowhere does it say mathematician. Does it say statistician? We've got a couple of analyst roles. But the point I'm trying to show is that, and it's gone back to Susan's point, there really are so many options that stem from the fact that, yes, I studied the statistics, and yes, I studied the maths, but it's about the logical thinking skills, the problem-solving skills. It's those skills that I've developed that have allowed me to jump from one industry to another, to go from different roles. So, market analytics director, what is that? So I'm sure we all see advertising every day. You can't get rid of it. Traditional advertising would be your TV. So, we see TV ads. You might be for Macca's, Meijer, a lot of the banks. It's always there. So, but we actually stop thinking about it. Or actually, what we do is we sort of fast forward it all because we're watching everything on catch up. And then when it gets really annoying, and probably what you guys see more of, is advertising on Facebook. How often have you been scrolling and you're like, oh, there's ads in my way, and how does anybody click on this stuff anyway? Well, that's what my job is. So my job is to help these businesses to actually understand, if I'm going to try to market, right? So we know that marketing helps to grow my business. How much should I spend? And which channel should I spend it on? Should I spend it on TV? Does anybody watch TV anymore? Everyone's talking about TV. It's not really being watched anymore. Newspapers, apparently that's dying off, so we shouldn't be advertising there. Maybe we should just put it all into Google because, well, that seems really reliable, when I typed mathematician in there. What about Facebook? How do we know where that money should go? Well, that's when I come in. And so what I do is I actually use statistics, and I build what we call a regression model. It's just a statistics technique. Now, I studied that at uni. I didn't like it. I hated it. I didn't understand it. But now that I actually use it in my everyday job. And so what we want to try to do is try to understand, for all this money that we're spending in TV, is it worth it? What's my return on investment? And what I mean by that is, for every dollar that I spend in that channel, how much am I actually making back? Is it worth my time? And these are questions that, as more and more marketing directors, they'll go to their chief execs and they want some money for marketing, and they'll say, well, why should we? Why should I give you money? Because, my brand's great. I'm McDonald's. I don't need to, everybody knows me. Yeah, but you've got competitors and they're going to be telling everyone that they should go and buy with them. So what my role is to show that marketing works, and it helps them to then be able to take these numbers into businesses. And, there's a lot of talk as well at the moment, and for the past 10 years or so anyway, around, tightening budgets and people, businesses are failing and we don't have money to spend on marketing. And so we have to actually help them to prove that marketing works. And the thing that I really love about it is that, there are stereotypes around people who do maths and people who study statistics. I mean, one great example is if you've heard of the supermodel Kylie Collins. She actually went to uni and she studied coding, and she has set up a program called Coding with Clossy. And they run these data coding camps for girls in the States. Now, there aren't many people that if you said to them, tell me about what a statistician looks like, is going to come up with a supermodel. Now, so we're constantly around these stereotypes. And one of the things that I love about my job is that I'm not away in a dark room, and I don't just sit there and churn out some numbers and then give it to people who get to go and, get the glory and get to stand and do the presentations. As I'm out there and I'm talking to the clients, I'm talking to chief executives, I'm talking to the people who make those decisions. So to me, I'm really getting to merge being able to use maths and use my skills there with actually understanding business. Now, even 10 years ago, I didn't really know what marketing was. It didn't really mean much. I just knew it was people doing stuff on TV. But to think that there can be science behind something that is primarily seen as an art, to me, it's just so useful, and businesses really rely on it. And it's just a really key example, and this is, we're all very different. All the ambassadors as part of this program, we have such different backgrounds, and we use these skills in such different ways. And I really hope that you can see that, if I hadn't studied maths, even up to high school level, I wouldn't be in this position. I potentially wouldn't be in this country, because what maths has allowed me to do is to travel around. It's given me the opportunity to move from the other side of the world I live in Melbourne, to one of the best cities, and actually be able to work in an industry that I previously didn't really know anything about. So I really would encourage you to just, as Linda said, if you enjoy maths, just keep working away at it, and there are really so many opportunities out there that it's pretty much the world is your oyster. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And there was a couple of things in there that I'm really glad that she did mention. One of which is that a lot of people think that if you're a mathematician or a statistician, that you're sitting at a desk all the time working on your own. Very few mathematicians and statisticians are sitting on a desk working on their own, because most of the jobs these days involve some kind of collaboration. You're working in teams, working on some kind of a problem. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And the other thing that I'm really glad that you mentioned is that maths is a global language. You can travel to other countries and you can still do maths. So it does give you that flexibility, not just to change between jobs in different industries, but to go to different countries and have those opportunities in their workplace. Okay, so the next video I'm going to show you is more the type of classical use of mathematics which you may have come across. We're going to be looking at a video of Lee, who works for Boeing. So please enjoy.
It's no easy task to make something fly. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner is made up of roughly 2.5 million parts, produced in over 20 countries. All these parts travel to the Boeing factory, where they are put together by a dedicated assembly team. It may seem like magic, putting one of these airplanes into the sky. But far from it. It's all hard work, underpinned by maths. My name is Lee Turnley, and I'm a manufacturing engineer working on the Boeing 787 assembly. A big part of my job is to speak to the operators, working on the movable trailing edge, which are the flaps on the back of the wings. Sometimes there is an opportunity to make the production even safer and faster. But to make any changes, I first have to analyse the whole build process. Engineering is a very analytical job. My brain is constantly ticking. My first instinct is always to ask, what is the data telling me? There is maths behind everything I do. I love that I get to spend about 90% of my time dealing with people. For me, engineering is all about communication and improving the workflow for our operators. Building an aircraft takes a lot of little steps, but I absolutely love seeing the end result. People travel the world, catch up with their families, and ultimately get wherever they need to go. And it's really nice knowing that I've played a little part in that.
So Lee was one of the people who worked on a project, and she did try to explain it to me one day. It was working on the flaps. And as she said on there, that it helped the planes to go faster, but what it also did is it meant that they actually used less fuel. So what she was actually doing was doing something for the environment as well, so that those planes could travel and they were safer, faster, and use less fuel, which is always good. Okay, so our next speaker is also an engineer, but Laura, if you would welcome her to stage as a chemical engineer, please.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Laura and I'm a chemical engineer. So I'm going to start by telling a joke, and I think it's a really lame joke because whenever I tell it, no one ever laughs. But I feel like I've got the perfect audience today. So female maths students, you're going to love it. Okay, so why was the atheist bad at exponentials? Because he didn't believe in higher powers. Funny. So there's a couple of things about that joke though that kind of annoys me. The first one is how this sense of like, oh, I'm bad at maths. So they've labelled themselves as bad. And the other things, did you notice how I said because he didn't believe in higher powers? Like I automatically just went to a guy. I was like, oh, clearly it's a guy who's doing the maths, who's telling this joke. So I'm going to come back to them, but I'm going to start by going through sort of my career and what I've been up to. So I just graduated uni last year, so I studied a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering with honours. And so I'm from Melbourne, so I did high school in Northcote in Melbourne. And I was okay at maths. Like I wasn't amazing, I wasn't terrible, but I sort of got to the end of year 10 and that's when I noticed things started to get really hard. I got a test back and it was for functions, so parabolas, and yeah, it was just hell on earth. And I got 27%. And I was just like, okay, that's not good. And this was around the time that we were choosing our year 11 and 12 subjects. And in my head, I wanted to be a doctor. So I knew that I was going to need to do some sort of maths in high school in order to do that at university. But I thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to continue into advanced level maths if I'm getting 27%. So I went to my maths teacher mid-crisis and I said, I'm thinking maybe maths isn't for me, maybe I should reassess. And she said, no, I think you can do it. You just need to put in some hard work, really practice over summer, and consistency is key. So make sure you just do a little bit every day. And she was confident that I would be able to get it. So that's my first tip, listen to your teachers, which is like an obvious one, you know, of course you listen to your teachers. But their advice, I don't think I realised at the time just how important it was. Like they knew me so well. And if I hadn't have taken their advice, I think I would have been on a completely different path. So I decided that I was going to set up my maths gym. And so when people want to get fit, they go to the gym every day and they do their weights and then they increase their weights. So I decided that it was going to be a maths gym. So I set up my desk with my maths book, and every day I would just do a couple of questions. So I started easy to build my confidence, and I just love those red ticks. I was like, and it was building momentum. So every day I would come back and do a little bit more, and they'd start to get harder, and they start to get harder, and I'd realised that my marks in year 11 were increasing. And I got to the end of year 12 and I was really happy with my VCE score, and I had to choose what I was going to do for uni. And I thought, I'll do a Bachelor of Medicine, but I didn't get in. So I went to my careers counsellor, again mid-crisis. I seem to have a lot of crises in high school. I don't know if you guys do. And I said, you know, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And she said, well, what subjects do you like? I said, I love chemistry. I'm pretty good at maths, I would say. And she said, well, have you looked at engineering? And in my head, I thought, no, I'm not doing engineering. Like guys do engineering. It's buildings, it's bridges, not really my scene. My vision for my future was like wearing summer dresses, and I didn't see summer dresses in engineering. And then she said, no, I think it's something you could be really interested in. So I did a bit of a Google, talked to a couple of people, and realised that actually engineering is just problem solving. And chemical engineering in particular, it's working with chemicals, which I had had a passion for in high school, so things like water treatment, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas. So I went to uni, started going really well, hit about third year of a 5-year course, and just thought, oh, this is really hard. I hit that brick wall again where I was like, maybe this isn't what I want to do. I'm really struggling. So I went to my lecturer and she said, well, have you thought about doing some practical experience? Because up until sort of third year, I was doing maths, but it was more the theory. So I was doing it from the book. And she said, have you thought about going on a trip or something? Some of those things that universities offer, like exchange. So I went to Nepal with Engineers Without Borders. You might have heard of Doctors Without Borders. It's a non-for-profit. This one is engineers, and they go and do humanitarian engineering projects. So while I was in Nepal, we were put in a rural village that had lots of destruction from the earthquake in 2015, and we worked on developing a traditional cook stove. So currently it's essentially just a fire, like a fire pit that they put a pan over and cook meals. And it's predominantly the women and the children. So the women do the cooking, and it's the children that are in the household. And they were finding that the smoke from this fire was causing respiratory issues. So things like pneumonia, and pregnant women were getting really sick. So we decided to design a ventilation system. So it had essentially a chimney so that all the smoke could go outside of the hut and into the air. And before I went to Nepal, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Like, I am going to save the world. And then I got there and I realised that you just learn so much from other cultures. I felt like I gained more from that experience in terms of my skill building, learning how to communicate with other cultures, and the different challenges that they experience compared to the things that I'd faced here in Australia. So then I went back to uni and I was offered an internship with ExxonMobil Australia. So ExxonMobil is an oil and gas company. They provide gas for your showers, so you can have hot showers, also fuel for your cars, all sorts of things, oils and things for your cars as well. And I was working offshore, so on the oil rig. That's where we get the oil and the gas out of the ground. And we were finding that we were bringing lots of plastic water bottles over offshore, and it was an environmental hazard because if this plastic went into the ocean, that's a massive issue. So in order to minimise that hazard, I worked on a desalination unit. So a desal unit is where it takes the water from the ocean and it goes through a reverse osmosis system. Some of you might not know osmosis from biology. And it takes all the salt out and all the contaminants, and then you're left with fresh water. So implemented that, which was really cool. And then went back to uni and did my honours project using Manuka honey as an environmental corrosion inhibitor. So when we have pipes in the ocean, they degrade, and it means that you open yourself up to a leak or something, contaminants going into the ocean. So by flushing something like honey down the pipe, you're able to create a barrier that protects the pipe from the water. And so I've got to work on some really cool projects like that. So last month, I started full-time work with ExxonMobil, and now I'm working as a pipelines risk and environment engineer. And when I first started, I thought, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm not on top of things. People were coming to me, asking me questions, and I felt like I was back at high school again, where I was looking at a maths question, and I thought, I have no idea. What am I going to do? And it's only the past sort of couple of weeks and reflecting on those times that I've come to realise it is more of a confidence issue, because as has been mentioned today, if you put in that hard work, and if you are able to revise your notes and talk to people, you will be able to pick it up. But it's also about having that confidence within yourself to go and seek that and know that you'll be able to do it. So, for example, last week I went to a hazard analysis, which is essentially where we all sit in a room and there's the government there, the council's there, and we talk about some of the risks that can happen with pipelines. And I was wearing this dress for reference, and there were about 26 other guys, and they were all wearing the standard sort of like blue shirt and pants. And I felt like a fish out of water. I thought I looked really stupid. I'm like, oh, I don't fit in here. And it's funny because when I see images of women in these roles, so for example, you might have seen Quinton Bryce, she's the Governor General. She's in this really awesome photo when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister. There was a cabinet photo, and she's wearing this amazing pink power suit, and she's standing in the middle, and there's all these men around, a couple of women, but I see that and it's so empowering. Whereas when I was in the situation, I thought this doesn't feel good at all, and I feel really out of place. And I think the thing that I'm going to work on developing, and just some advice for everyone, is to have that trust in yourself that, like, no, I do deserve to be here. I am good at maths, and if I'm not now, I actually have the skills to be able to go back, check in with my teachers, check in with my parents, check in with my peers, and see where we can go forward. So that's just a brief sort of overview of the last couple of years of my life in terms of maths. And so I encourage you all to hit that maths gym and think about sort of what opportunities you can have in maths. And I'm excited for the panel. So happy International Women's Day. And I hope you take a lot out of this session today. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. And I can say, even like the very first time I heard about the maths gym, I absolutely love that idea. You know, that little bit of practice put in can pay huge dividends. So thank you, Laura. This will be the last video that we're going to show today of one of our ambassadors. Marita's actually from Queensland, so a lot of you may know about her, and she was Young Australian of the Year, so we've been very, very honoured to have her as one of our ambassadors. She's living over in the US at the moment, so just enjoy her video.
I created my first robot in a garage. I didn't know how to build robots or where to start. But I had an idea. I wanted to use the internet to travel the world and to interact with other people. And as an engineer, I decided to turn that idea into my first robot that people could use, teleport. My name is Marita Cheng, and I use maths to dream up and create robots of the future. was at uni, I was always aware of how few women there were in my engineering classes. So I founded RoboGals to inspire young girls to get involved in robotics and engineering. That was 10 years ago. Since then, we've taught over 70,000 girls from all over the world. This technology can help children in remote areas attend school and participate in the classroom.
Hey! Hi, Fee!
My dream is to make robots affordable and accessible for everyone. My team at Albert is currently working on robots that are lighter and more portable. Our design relies heavily on maths to help ensure all the parts fit together precisely. The motors and the sensors work together using software and calculations to navigate the space and prevent the robot from bumping into walls. I'm now based in the United States, and a big part of my work is traveling to many different countries and sharing my vision of the future. With maths, we can build on this amazing technology to help people with their everyday tasks. It took a lot of effort and planning to create my first robot, Teleport. But now we're aiming to launch 4 new robots this year. I guess once you've hit a milestone, you realize you're just at the beginning of an even bigger adventure.
Right, so our last speaker that we're going to have today, you might recognise her face when she comes up from the very first video. We're also very, very lucky that she's here with us today because Cassie actually works for the Country Fire Authority in Victoria, and if those of you who've been watching the news will know that we've had a really rough time recently, and people like Cassie have been working extremely hard to get things under control. So we're really, really pleased that she did still manage to find the energy to come and speak to you today. So if you could please welcome Cassie.
Hi everyone, and welcome to everyone on the live stream as well. I'm super type A, so I do have notes. But I work for the Country Fire Authority, or CFA, as Susan said, in Victoria. I'm a program manager. I'm really excited to speak to you all today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my journey with STEM and what that has meant for my career so far. So my dad's Australian with an English and Scottish background, but my mum actually grew up in India. So she migrated to Australia with her family as a teenager. My mum was always told by her teachers and her friends to stop being so outspoken. She was encouraged to follow the main acceptable paths for women at that time to become a teacher or a secretary. My grandparents did one of the bravest things that I can imagine and actually packed up their 3 daughters with, I think, 2 suitcases between all 5 of them and moved to Australia. My mum went on to study commerce and finance, and she's even shorter than I am, but she's a very talented financial controller now, so really rocking the corporate world. My dad was one of 10 kids, so I would say Dad really went out of his way to make a lot of extra time to answer my millions of questions about the universe and how absolutely everything in it worked. So a lot of my favourite memories revolve around those things. I remember playing with toy cars with Dad, rolling different sizes down a plank of wood and talking about which one would reach the ground faster, which one would stop first. And it was one of the best lessons that I've had in acceleration and gravity, and then later on, why you leave extra braking distance for trucks. So it's one of the main things that has inspired me is how much my parents have encouraged me to have that inquiring mind. So always looking deeper than just the what, but trying to understand the why behind things. That curiosity has always meant that I've asked a few more questions than a lot of my peers, but it shows that I really want to understand how the world works around me. So as I look around the room today, I think I see a lot of other curious minds. So the piece of advice that I have for you is to never stop asking that why. Always keep asking those questions. I had a lot of career aspirations through school and even through university. That included being an astronaut and a psychiatrist, anything that could tell me more about the universe or how the mind and brain works and the world around me. I always knew, though, that maths and science was going to be a really, really important part of whatever career it was that I did choose. One of my first jobs out of high school while I was studying at university was actually tutoring maths at a tutoring centre. And I think out of that I really learned how much I enjoy understanding how to help other people learn, how to best explain things to each individual person so we can all understand that universal language of maths. So in the last years of high school, I started looking around at what are the jobs and degrees that interested me. And I actually did have, when I was making my subject selections, I was talked out of choosing maths, and it was my maths teacher that actually called me after school and said, you've taken maths methods and specialist off your subject selections, why have you done that? And I ended up putting them back on, and it was just the best decision and best advice that I got. So I also did biology, chemistry, physics, geography and English at that year 12 level. And everyone kept saying, do something easy, do something fun. But I made time for my hobbies as well. So performing in school musicals, playing sport, and that ticked all of those boxes and gave me that balance. I ended up going on to study a Bachelor of Science at Melbourne University, and I tried so many disciplines within that degree because you do get that diversity. Including an art history subject, not for me, turns out. So I ended up in zoology, conservation and environmental risk assessment. So that was everything from drawing horse skeletons to modelling oil spills and looking at environmental protection. So it really was interesting, and it just let me try so many different things, both at that technical level, but also at that really practical level, which is so important. I then went on to do my Masters in Projects and Events Management. Briefly thought I might be a wedding planner. But I was still just trying to find that right blend. What works for me? I love all the technical stuff, but I also talk a lot. So I really I knew I probably wasn't cut out for it for a lab coat, and I had all of those stereotypes in my mind, but what was the right job for me? I have to say, at CFA, I have absolutely found that balance. So I get to bring all of those skills together. I grew up in fire risk areas in Victoria, so the aim of CFA to protect life and property really spoke to me at a fundamental level as well. And our organisation focuses on being connected with the community. We work with both volunteer members and staff, and we do a lot of research and analysis, so we understand and measure the risks that are faced by the community, how this differs across different terrain, across the map of Victoria. We look at climate change, fire behaviour, weather patterns, population growth and density, and all of the different risks that come with that. I don't directly put the wet stuff on the hot stuff. Really interesting career, very exciting. If any of you choose to go down that path, I thoroughly encourage it. But my job sits a lot more behind the scenes. So my aim is to make everything we do better, more efficient. So in my role as a program manager at CFA, I wear a few hats. I lead a large team made up of project specialists, finance managers, and a number of other disciplines. So I run the project management office for CFA's operational directorate. We're called Fire and Emergency Management. So that looks after projects that directly put the wet stuff on the hot stuff. So getting fire trucks out the door, working on new trucks as new risks emerge and we need to do new things, being part of the design process and getting those projects off the ground. I also look after our organisation's largest project, which is recruiting and training firefighters, engaging with the community and building brand new infrastructure, so that's brand new fire stations and brand new trucks and appliances. It's a complex budget around a lot of complex modelling around the life cycle of a firefighter and things like that. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, so $700 million project. And we look at things like where we should be building new fire stations based on projected population growth. That means assessing the changing risks in the environment as well about what we need to do. So maths has played a huge part in my life. My job might not seem immediately obvious as a maths career, but it's my enjoyment of problem solving and my attention to detail that has really helped me. So that can be spotting when the budget doesn't look quite right, or is there an opportunity for us to do something different? Can we improve something? And I love people, so I love being able to speak to people about their issues and problems, working through them, breaking them down piece by piece, just like an algebra problem. So then we can work collaboratively, take the next step and figure out how do we solve the problem, and then also effectively communicate that to all of our different audiences, all of the different minds that make up our organisation and our community. So I have to say I'm really proud to be one of CFA's female leaders. I'm working really hard to build and mentor diverse and constructive teams across the organisation. I'm known for being technical-minded, pretty analytical, but also people-focused, and that balance has really been huge in helping me progress in my career as well. I love to travel, I play soccer, I perform in musical theatre, and I do really enjoy spending time with my friends and family as well. So I guess the main thing about me is I am passionate about understanding everything in the world around me. So I like to find my way through challenges, help other people do the same. I've had plenty of people throughout my career ask me why I'm not doing something easier or more fun, and what I have to say is I love my job. It is fun. One of my main goals at work is to really pave the way for others, so at least putting cracks in that glass ceiling so I can shatter it for the people coming after me in my amazing team and the broader organisation. My main focus is to make sure that I leave anything better than how I found it. So again, a piece of advice that I have for you is pursue any and all of the opportunities that are presented to you, and really question anyone who's telling you that something's not right for you, especially if you feel differently about it. So lastly, maths truly is a fantastic base for so many careers. This universal language builds your transferable skills and gives you a credibility that you are someone who will problem solve something right through to the end. It also can help you in your hobbies as well, lining up a soccer goal, music, all of those things. So there are just so many ways to achieve, and there are so many questions in the world, and it's up to you as the curious minds to be the future of those achievements and those answers. Really looking forward to the panel, so thank you so much.
Thank you. And one of the things that I really would like to emphasise is when Cassie was saying that she nearly didn't do methods and specialists. That's what we call them in Victoria. A lot of you are in Year 10 and you will be choosing your options. When you choose your options, really think about things. Think about what you're passionate about. Make sure you don't block your pathways. Keep your options open for later on. Don't just listen to what your friends are going to do. That's the thing that a lot of people do. But listen to what your teachers tell you, and actually, put a lot of thought into them. They are really important to get those options right for your future. Okay, and obviously, I may be a little bit biased, but if you do those high levels of maths, you do open pathways to a lot of different careers and jobs. So now it's going to be your chance to ask some of the speakers' questions. So if they would come up here, please. And we have Kristen, who is down here, who will have a microphone somewhere. Yeah. If you would like to ask a question but you don't want to ask it yourself, if you just put your hand up, if you write it down on that little notepad that's in your bag, that will be fine. But if you'd like to speak it for yourself, we've got a cube which I think we're going to throw around. I'm hoping that Kristen can aim properly and that it doesn't end up on your head or something. So I'll just move this out of the way, I'm going to sit down. Is there anybody who would like to get the ball rolling and has a question to ask at any of the panel? Who's going to be the big brave one to ask the first question? Someone. Oh yeah, there we are. Well done. Give her a round of applause. Go.
I have no idea. Do I talk into this? Yeah. Okay. When you were in high school, did you find that you didn't have enough time to like study or anything, or did you always like make sure you studied?
Who'd like to take that one?
I'll go. Is this still on? Yeah. Oh, it's working. I think it's hard, and it's a tough one to balance, and I think everyone's going to be different. So I studied maths more because I liked it and I found it easy. I studied English a little bit less because I hated it and I found it hard. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because you just get better at the things that you're already good at. But the most important thing to me is find what works for you. So it might be that for someone else, they're going to go home and they're going to study for an hour every single night between 7 and 8, and that's it, that's them done. That might not work for you. You might decide that you want to also go and do sport. I did a lot of sport. You know, I played sport growing up. So and actually it's probably a skill that then will keep you going for the rest of your life, is how do you balance those things? You know, because you know you've got to work hard. That doesn't mean to say, you know, you can't also go and enjoy. I played netball, I did running, and I saw my friends. So what works for you will be different from what works for one of your friends. And it might be that I'm going to do 10 minutes. But 10 minutes is better than no minutes. And that's probably the thing. And not beating yourself up about it, I think, as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, similar to Cassie, I was doing a lot of musical theatre and singing.
I also do calisthenics, and sometimes I knew, okay, Thursday nights are just out. There's not a lot of homework that I can do on a Thursday night. So I would make sure to, at the start of the week, sort of schedule some blocks of time that I knew that I was able to do some homework. But same sort of thing, if you've got 10 minutes, that's what I found really good about the maths gym, is that I didn't have this overwhelming obligation to sit there for 2 hours and just go through everything. I'm going to be really effective and really efficient in these 10 minutes, and then I'm going to move on. And I found that too with all areas. I mean, there's no point just sitting at your desk and doing an 8-hour study session if nothing is going in. It's better if you do, you know, a 1 hour, really productive, go outside, have a walk, make sure you sleep, and just study smarter, not harder. Yeah.
The thing I would add to that is cramming, and I was a natural crammer, has made me really good at deadlines. So just different things work for different people, and just trust whatever your natural state feels like.
Since we all have to talk, I suppose. So this might maybe apply more when you go to university, perhaps. But so I'm a morning person, and so I prefer I take more in first thing in the morning than at 5 o'clock at night. So I used to have people come, so we stayed in the shared accommodation. So some of my classmates would come home and start studying 5 or 5 p.m, or they might start studying at 8 p.m, and by then I've clocked off, and it kind of made me feel a little guilty. I'm like, oh, I suppose I should be studying now because they are. But that didn't work for me, and I never took anything in because I was a 7 o'clock in the morning to 9. That's when I was best. And so perhaps it takes time, but maybe just finding what works best for you, and try not to beat yourself up and compare yourself to your friends who will also have different learning techniques and different routines. So try to just find what works for you, and not to compare yourself too much with what's going on around you.
So it's not just the different jobs, it's different techniques and approaches to your work. Okay, anybody else have a question?
Oh, God.
Right over there. You're going to have to...
Okay, I'm going to have to throw. Maybe we'll pass it along. I'm not very good at netball, so...
How does this work? Okay, so what do you think you found the most difficult about studying such high levels of maths in school?
Who'd like to kick off with that one? The most difficult.
Most difficult. I think the most important thing is not giving up on it. And it's that, you know, like I say, I studied things that I found easier, and so they get easier, but it's not giving up. And you will, and actually, you know, if we're going to go, you know, broader, you know, you're always going to come across that. You're going to get to a first job and something will be really hard, or you're going to, you know, come across, maybe you do sport, maybe you do athletics and you can't break that time barrier for your 5K run or whatever. You're always going to find something, but it's just that keep working at it, and I think that's probably the hardest thing, is especially if you're kind of just swanning along and then it's like all of a sudden, oh no, I don't get that. So it's the hardest thing can be realizing that, you know, that there might be a bit of a block, and then just you can't just trying to practice it, but also ask for help. That's, you know, never being ashamed to actually go to your teachers are there for a reason, and asking for that help.
One of the things that I found difficult was perhaps the amount of time required that for me to understand something. So I would have to read something like 5 times or something to be able to understand it, or it might take me a little bit longer to solve a problem. And so that for me was a challenge when I did the higher level maths, but yeah, I'm not sure what you guys think.
So for me, I'm one of those people who, if someone explains it to me and I haven't understood it, at your age, I was a bit embarrassed. Obviously, didn't want to make them feel bad that they hadn't explained it well. If I didn't want to say, I actually don't get it. I have gotten over that now, but one of the things that was really hard for me was if I didn't understand something, particularly I have to say in that highest level of maths, so specialist maths for me, sometimes those concepts weren't clicking. I took to asking a few different friends to explain it to me in their way. And I had amazing friends who were willing to do that, and I know that there was some differentiation where one of them would just go, it doesn't really matter, just pretend that's a smiley face, and then that one just carries through, and it was about what clicked for my brain. And if I asked the same question of 3 different people, eventually that explanation clicked for me. And I just wasn't afraid to go and ask different people, and then tell them all, of course, that their explanation was the best.
Similar sort of thing. I used to find those really abstract concepts hard to comprehend. So for example, if you've got something that goes to affinity, I'm like, that's so odd. Like, how am I supposed to, what's the number? And so I think for me it was about putting it into context. Okay, so what's this problem? How does this apply to the real world? So I'd look for examples. So infinity, Earth is infinity. So I'd try to understand the concept, or ask the teacher if they could explain a real life example. And that way I could actually realise why I was doing it and sort of envisage, okay, so I'm calculating this in terms of the universe, rather than just like, what is this number? Like, this isn't, you know, infinity and imaginary numbers, even algebra and stuff. It's like, well, I found it really hard to envisage it without those real life examples.
And that can actually be quite hard. When you're going through school, you still don't actually really understand what you are going to apply some of those things to in real life. And I suppose that's the whole point of bringing people here today, is to try to show you that actually what you are doing, you may not be able to see today, you may not be able to see this year, or if you're in year 10 or 11 next year, you may not be able to grasp exactly what the use of that skill is going to be later on, which is why you're here, so that they can see that those skills are useful to real life later on. But perhaps it's hard to show that when you're at school, because some of those concepts are still a little bit beyond you at the time. But study groups, great way. If you've got a bunch of friends and you can study together, it may seem a really sort of cliche thing to do, but actually being able to talk to other people, and when you're explaining a concept to somebody, so if you're able to help your friend, actually you're learning as much as your friend is learning from you, because when you're being able to explain something, it means you really understand it. So, so having study groups, getting together with your friends is a really good way to actually help you through your schooling. Okay, anybody else? Do you have any more questions?
So these days, there are hardly any tangible obstacles to a woman's career in maths, says Julia Wolfe, a reader in pure maths at Bristol University, and I quote, there are the small things that come together that make it harder for women to succeed. So what do you think those little things are that make it harder for women to succeed?
All right, who wants to start that one?
We are our own worst enemies, and it's some of it comes down to what Laura was talking about confidence. And there's people talk about a thing called Impostor Syndrome, and women are more likely to suffer from this syndrome than men, and it's that constantly, do I deserve to be here? What did I do to get it? It's not questioning yourself, but it's just believing in yourself, and I think it's kind of innate in us a little bit more than it is in men. And it's not the fault of men, you know. It's us. So it's about realizing ourselves that we deserve to go to that next level or to put ourselves forward, because that, you know, it is, if you watch somebody on stage who, even if they pretend that they're confident about what they're talking about, you're going to believe in them a little bit more. Whereas if somebody kind of looks like they're not really sure what they're talking about, then you're not going to be sure what they're talking about. So to me, it's entirely your own confidence can be a big barrier.
Yeah, I went to and it was about how to negotiate your pay and how to negotiate things with your employer, which is really difficult. And they were talking about how women are less likely to ask for pay rises. They're usually more willing to take the first offer, and they're really reluctant to ask for things like flexible work hours and those sorts of conditions that made a difference. And yeah, there were also studies that showed women are less likely to advocate for themselves. So they're really good at advocating for a group of people or on behalf of someone. And we've all seen it. Like if you have a friend who says, oh, I did so badly on that maths test, you'll say like, oh no, Sally, like that was awesome. You've had a really rough week. Like your dog just died. I think you did the best you could. Whereas how many of us actually have that self-talk? I mean, usually we say, oh, that was terrible. You know, and we make up this plan. Next time, I've got to do something because that was really bad. And I think it does come back to that confidence, being nice to yourself, and also acknowledging that you don't have to get 100% every time, but it's just about doing that hard work and doing the best that you can. I think that sort of helps overcome that challenge.
Have anything to add?
So, in terms of the things that can stand in our way, we could all list off, and all of our lists would be different as well. In my industry, firefighting, fairly male-dominated. One of the things that I really noticed when I started working there was just how small I was compared to everybody else. And so it is about finding the thing that gives you that little bit of confidence. And a lot of that is internal, but I also love my high heels. So you've just got to find the balance between the different things that make you feel empowered in that moment and back up the confidence that you should absolutely have in yourself.
That's good. Where are we going to now?
How do you keep up your motivation when the questions get like a bit harder and you're just kind of a lazy person?
My work, I go through real highs and lows, and so maybe I have like 1 month of really productive work, and then I might have 3 months or so of just nothing's working, I can't solve the problems, and it's harder to go to work each day. But in honesty, I've talked to like a lot of my fellow PhD students, like my friends and others who do the same work as I do, and they all find it the same. So how you deal with it is a hard thing. You just have to push through, because in my experience, my work is a lot of highs and lows, and so you just have to keep going until you get a high again. And yeah, you just have to, I suppose keep your head high, because something will come out of it eventually, even if it does take you a little bit longer than you thought, but you just have to keep going.
Sanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For me, that's a huge motivational thing. If something's not working, try it a different way. So I'll sit down with my team and we'll talk about it. I'll explain it to someone else or ask them to explain it to me. I'll do it on the whiteboard instead of a piece of paper. Go for a walking meeting or you know, walk around with your textbook and try just a different way of intaking and understanding the information. That would be in terms of breaking up that motivation piece.
That's pretty.
That's what my mum used to say. And not that I've ever run a marathon, but I hear that when you're in that lull, that you're supposed to just keep going. And it's not the time when you just burst up. Like you pull that energy and yeah, you keep going, I suppose.
Do you want to add anything, Leslie? Because Leslie has run a lot of marathons.
Yeah, you can add to that.
Technically too. No, I think the ladies have covered it.
Yeah. Any more? Oh, Sarah?
Okay, I'm going to throw.
Oh,
okay.
Watch
Everybody duck.
I was just wondering, during school, what other subjects besides maths did you study?
I did biology, English language, maths methods, chemistry, psychology. Yeah. Oh, I did politics as well. Yeah, that was my sort of not my break, but my open mind thinking.
I did English, which I think here Mike call it English lit or something here. Yeah. They had to do it. They made us do math and English, and then other than that was physics. I'm going to say computing, which would be so vastly different to anything that you guys would do now. We didn't have the internet and we used floppy disks. If you don't know what they are, you're going to have to Google it. It was very different. And I did PE as well, because actually it's a thing that it kind of comes back to that balance of working hard but making sure you've got time for your hobbies, because I'm sporty and I loved it. I wasn't going to go and study, be a PE teacher or to do sport or sports science, but it was good because I got to go and run around and play sport. And interestingly, again, another very male-dominated subject, that's for sure.
So what they call their classes over there, I think, slightly different to here. So I had to take English, and I think I failed it. I'm not a writing person, and I did calculus and statistics. Those were the only two maths that we could choose from, so I chose both of them. And it was chemistry, physics, and music. Yep, that's what I took in my final year of school, I believe.
So music was your passion then, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep, that was my hobby, yep.
I did my maths, but I also did English and geography, which were actually my top 2 scores out of the 7 subjects that I did. But I think a really important part of that question as well is, through school I sung in a choir, played a musical instrument, did martial arts, played soccer, and ran and performed in theatre, and it is about that breadth. And those are the skills that you will talk about at interview as well. It's so important that you tie everything you do together, because this is about that universal language, those transferable skills.
And interestingly, when you come across people who do fill their lives with lots of different things, they tend to be more organised. You can fit everything in as long as you are organised and you plan your time. There's plenty of enough hours in the day to do all your subjects and have passions. You just got to map them all out. Do we have anyone else?
When did you first come across the careers that you're in now, and what helped you to decide it was the right career for you?
So that's biology, technology and maths. And I didn't know what that was until I started my PhD, and my PhD was in that field. So I didn't actually know until I went to where I was doing my PhD, and they're like, oh, you're in the bioinformatics department. I was like, okay, well, what's that? And then I'd turn up and my boss is calling me a bioinformatician, and I was like, okay, I don't know. I thought I was working on cancer, but I was working on malaria. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I do now. I know what I'm doing now.
That's a good question. I don't actually know that my current job title is not necessarily what I'd say my career is. Because as I sort of showed, I've ended up in, in market research and marketing, newspapers. But the key thing for me is that I'm currently in a job. My career will always change. I have no idea what I'm going to do next. I just knew when I was your age, I liked maths. Like I think I said, I thought I would probably, I knew I would be a terrible teacher because I didn't have the patience to do it. Like, no way. So I thought, well, I'll probably be an accountant because that was what I thought mathematicians did. But I think the key thing is that it doesn't matter that I didn't know then. And I'd never heard of any job that I've done or any job a lot of people do, because it's just a title. And the key thing is that, yeah, it doesn't matter if, at the age of 15, 16, you don't know what you want to do. The key thing is trying to set up some of those skills so that you can then change. And you know what, in 10 years' time, I hope I'll win something different. Because it keeps it interesting as well.
I didn't realize engineering until the day before preference closed. So I was literally like staring at a screen, like, oh, should I do science? Should I do biomed? And then, yeah, it was when I talked to my careers counsellor that she recommended engineering. But for me, I wasn't sure. It was jumping into the unknown. And I guess I was lucky in the sense that I did really love it straight away. But for example, my sister, we're twins, so she has gone on a different path. She studied law for a while, she studied biomedicine. Now she's in her final year of physio, but it doesn't really matter about, it sounds so cliche, it doesn't matter about the destination, but it's about sort of that journey that you go on to be able to find, okay, what really suits me, like what am I interested in?
I was actually a marketing manager in the construction industry, and I decided that I wanted to do something that I felt more connected to. So that was where I moved to CFA, and that was 6 years ago now, and I think I'm on my 4th promotion in that 6 years at CFA. So it goes to show that just because you pick a sector, it doesn't mean that that's the only job or career that you might have within that sector as well.
And I think that's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, you hear this so often that all of you in this room, you are going to have so many different careers. So it's not necessarily about worrying about the career that you want. It's about making sure that you can go into the careers that you want later on, or that you've got the skills to adapt as the jobs change and the careers change, that you've got the skills to actually move with them and change direction. Do we have any more? I think perhaps we can maybe just do one more. Oh, 2 more then, okay. Yep.
Okay, hello. So what subjects should you focus on if you want to become a doctor, but you don't really like maths, you're not really confident at it?
Yeah, you can be a doctor.
I'm a doctor, but I don't practice medicine.
It's true.
Do you mean a medical doctor?
Yeah, like an eye doctor maybe, or a nurse.
Yeah, firstly I would say think about, there's so many aspects of being a doctor. You don't have to necessarily be, your GP doctor. You can become, you can get your PhD and be a doctor, or you can work as a nurse, or there's even things within medical research or areas like that. So think about, as well as sort of the lifestyle, is being a doctor the sort of lifestyle you want? For me, one of the reasons that I'm quite happy that I didn't end up in medicine was that I've got a really good work-life balance. So I get to go home and play sport and everything, and I can still put in I still feel like I'm helping people in my career, but without sort of that pressure of getting a call at 2 a.m. saying, can you do this? But I mean, if that is something you want to go into, I would say pick those subjects that you're really interested in. And I think that in order to be a doctor, probably maths is something you're going to have to choose just in terms of the university courses that are available, because they do have the prerequisites and things. And regardless of sort of which industry you go into in terms of STEM, you're going to require those maths skills, whether it be medicine or into engineering or any of the careers we've heard about today.
Be great and work in medical research, as Lyndall does, as being a mathematician or a statistician. So there's lots of different ways of actually working in the medical field that are not just your classical GP. So where was the last question?
With your work, where you have to give answers and you're not completely confident that you think the answers might not be right, how do you get the confidence to give the answers?
So if I'm not 100% sure on some results that I'm showing someone, I'll just say, I've done my best, I think this is what I should have done, and this is the result that I got. But perhaps there's another way of doing it that I didn't think of, or I wasn't aware of, or I just haven't got around to doing that. So I feel like it's a bit of honesty, in that people appreciate honesty, and it's not going to make you look bad or anything like that. So yeah, I would just say if you're just honest, and if you're not 100% sure of something, just be like, yeah, I gave it a go, but this is what I think. And then perhaps if you've got someone like I would have a boss, perhaps I could talk to my boss and maybe they would give me some ideas as to how I could maybe feel more confident in my answers and that type of thing.
You would struggle to find a job where someone is working entirely on their own. So you might work on a project on your own, or you might be technically doing your own piece of research, or you might be leading a project. But you rarely will find somebody who does something, the whole thing on their own. So my advice, and it's something that I've gained the confidence. It's kind of ironic because the more experienced you are, the more experienced you become, and the longer you've been working, the more confident you are in saying, I don't know something. And it's perfectly fine to say, I don't know how to do this, because probably someone else on your team or someone else will. So like Lyndall said, it's being honest, because again, I don't know if you've watched somebody or you watch someone lying, unless they're very, very good, you can kind of tell when someone isn't confident, or when they're, they don't truly believe in something themselves. So you would get caught out. So the best thing you can do is say, look, this is what I've done. This is what I think, this is how I worked around it, this is what we're getting. I'm not entirely sure, or I'm not entirely convinced that it's finished yet. Has anyone else got ideas? And it's perfectly fine to reach out to the people around you. But that is something that I've learned. The longer I've worked, the more confident I've become in saying, I don't know everything. Funny that. There's a reason you have people around you.
Can I just add to what I was saying? So when I was at uni, I would get really annoyed. So I'll be doing my maths problems, and then I'll do my maths problem and I'll look at my answer and it's not the same as the answer in the back of the book. And I'm just like, oh. And then I'd look and half the working's not there. And so I didn't know where I went wrong, because they've missed out 3 sentences of working because they assumed that you knew it. And so I would have my little list of problems, and I would just literally take that to my teacher. And so I would just be completely honest. I'd be like, I didn't get these right, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't understand where these missing steps are. Like, what am I doing wrong? So if you're sort of making mistakes like that, or you're just sort of, I lost my train of thought. Just being honest.
Interesting.
Don't know.
Because I've only been in my role sort of a month. And I feel like I've had that feeling a lot. I've had people come to me saying, hey Laura, what do you think about this? And in my head I'm like, I have no idea. Or I'll have some thoughts, but I just don't have the confidence to sort of give my opinion. So it's really interesting hearing, possibly for me it would be
slightly older members
yeah,
of the
from the older hearing. Maybe I should be more honest and actually say no, but more experienced. But at the moment, what I've been going with is, if I'm not sure, I'll say, look, I don't have an answer for you right now, but here's the way that I would go about seeking that answer. And so think about the people that I'd be able to talk to, think about, can I find it on Google? I've been using Google a lot lately. Thinking about all those resources that I have and explaining that to the person. And sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, have you talked to whoever and whoever? They have really good expertise in this area. So then even just building up your networks and contacts is a great way to sort of be able to find the answers. So yeah, I'm not sure how about answering the question, but usually I have an idea of where I can find it.
Yeah, really quickly. So ask an expert. If you're supposed to be the expert, don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure, I need to get back to you. I have these kind of conversations amongst my team all of the time, and that's probably the message that I'd like to say. Diversity of thought. Having conversations in groups that have a really diverse composition means you are going to get a better outcome. You're going to get better problem solving going on. And from the questions that you guys are asking, it would not surprise me in the slightest if you are the people being sought out in 5 and 10 years' time to be that diversity of thought and be part of those groups.
Fantastic. Now, can you give the panel a hand? So, look, what we're hoping that you will have seen today is all the different things that you can do if you carry on with some form of mathematics. But personal appeal here. For you to carry on with your mathematics and for your generation to carry on with mathematics and to become those mathematicians who are going to go and solve all those wonderful problems in the world, somebody needs to teach you those skills. And that's another wonderful career. Actually, teaching is a fantastic career to have. I should know I was a teacher for many, many years. And it is a very, very worthwhile career. And I can tell you now, Australia and a lot of other countries in this world, they need good maths teachers. And you've obviously got some good maths teachers because they've brought you here today. And so thank you all for coming. You have got lunch outside, so you do have the opportunity to informally to talk to your speakers today. Please, could you please turn your sheets over at some stage, fill in those surveys and hand them back to your teachers. This helps us to know how to improve our events and give us some feedback. And what I would really like you to do is give yourself a big hand. You've been great. You've listened so attentively. So thank you very much.